Hey everybody, it's Barb from Making at Home, and Aaron.
Hello!
He's here today because there's food involved in this video.
Yeah.
Today we're going to talk about how to get started with your emergency food storage preps, and we're going to review a couple of different companies that we are affiliates with that have some really great food options to use in emergencies. Beginning of our series that we're doing on emergency preparedness for everyday people. No tinfoil hat needed. I think that's a huge misconception about preppers, that they all are like the doomsday preppers from Nat Geo channel.
Well, that's what's kind of funny is prepping is actually not a new thing. The term prepping is.
Yeah.
Prepping's been around for ages. Homesteaders have been doing it for a long time and preserving their own foods that they make on their property.
Yeah, and I think what people have to realize who are just average people like me and Aaron, who just have, you know, a normal life and a normal jobs and what have you, is that emergency preparedness, it's like another form of insurance. I think the reason that people are so adverse to the idea of preparedness or emergency preparedness and doing that kind of thing is because people don't want to think about the idea that everything that they worked for in their life, you know, however long that is, 5, 10, 20 years, can just be taken away from them in an instant. And that's why I think people don't really like the idea of prepping, is because they're scared to come to the realization that in an emergency or a natural disaster, or, you know, that it could all be taken away. And yeah, that's a scary thing.
It is, but also, you know, with us doing this, we've only been doing this for
probably like 5-10 years.
5-10 years now, and I mean, we don't have a huge storage of food like some people that we know or some of the YouTubers that we watch, but it does take a lot of the load off your back when you know you have food in there when anything happens.
Emergency preparedness is not just for like natural disasters or like civil uprisings or, you know, whatever.
SHTF.
Yeah. Back in 2008, when the recession hit and people were losing their jobs left and right, my brother actually lost his job. Well, he had to transfer because he was laid off from his job. And he actually is a huge prepper, and he's been doing it for quite a long time. So he had that insurance, knowing that even if he wasn't going to see a paycheck, and he got lucky, he just transferred for a while until he found another job. Mm-hmm. But he had that backup. So he knew that his family wouldn't starve. He knew that, you know, he had what he needed. And that's something to consider as well. I mean, we never know when the next, you know, financial disaster will happen and people lose their jobs that they've had forever. It can happen to anybody. And it's like I said, that's what I think the big reason that the average person really doesn't like the idea of emergency preparedness is because they're scared of that. And it's like I always say on every prepping blog post, every prepping video or anything I've ever talked about, failing to prepare is preparing to fail. And that's a prepper motto.
You have to get past that fear.
You do have to get past that fear and just really, really think about it as another form of insurance.
Exactly.
Like, you don't drive around without auto insurance. You don't own a house without homeowner's insurance. It just totally makes sense. So how do you get started prepping? Like, how do you get started with emergency preparedness? And this is why we wanted to talk about food storage, is because that's the very first step, I think, that was one of the first steps that we took.
Food and water.
Was food and water storage. Mm-hmm. And water storage is going to be a whole nother video. We're just going to touch on the basics of how the different methods you can get started with food storage. The first one, and you know, the easiest way to get started is why we're focusing on this today, is the different types of freeze-dried food. And I know everybody's seen them out there. They're in the grocery stores, they're online, you know, people, backpackers, campers, we've known about this forever.
Yeah, you have Mountain House, Backpackers Pantry, Augustin, Be Prepared, Valley Foods. There's tons of them. I mean, you have MREs.
Ugh.
Yeah.
I think you're tired of this.
No, actually, the new ones aren't too bad from what I heard. I just haven't tried them yet.
But
That's why they came with Tabasco sauce.
Yeah, I know, because they're flavorless. I had sea rats from Dad one time. It was.
Oh, those are even worse.
Oh, those are gross.
Anyhow,
the easiest way to get started with emergency food preparedness is to start with a 72-hour supply. The reason we say that is because the CDC, FEMA, all of the websites say you have to have at least 72 hours of food and water for each member of your family. It's a good starting point. And that's why the freeze-dried foods really come in handy in that sense, because you can buy them in buckets. This is a small one because this is a one-person kit. And like every single one of the companies we are talking about have these kits on their website. Valley Food is one of the only ones that doesn't have like a 72-hour kit or something like that, but they do sell food buckets. But they do have like supplies where you can buy a year's supply of food or a month's supply of food, and yeah. So they all have like a month supply, 72-hour supply. It's just a little different for each company. Comparatively, pricing, they're all pretty much about the same when it comes to pricing. I will say that you can buy some of the bigger name brands in the stores, like Costco, Walmart, Winco. A lot of those stores will carry some kind of emergency food buckets or food supplies. But I will say we are leaving links down below, because if you buy them online, you can usually get really good sales or discounts. It's worth it to check that first and then, comparison shop. That's what we do.
Yes. Save your money any way you can possibly.
Yeah. If you're on a budget and you want to get started with emergency food storage, like I said, the first place to start is with a 72-hour plan. That's bare minimum.
And then from there you want to build up and go further out. Each time you're trying to prep for it, you go a little bit further. So next you would want to go ahead and shoot for a couple weeks, and then from there a month, and then from there maybe 2 months. And you just slowly add to it. I mean, this stuff does not take up a lot of room. I mean, that's pretty thin. You can stack a lot of these in one pantry, and if you're doing it right, you're buying food that you eat. So, you can stack a ton of these in there and make these for your family when, you don't have the time to make a giant meal. Then you can go ahead and do one of these, and then next time you are doing your budget or grocery shopping, you just remember to add that to your list to buy another bag or buy another bucket, whichever company you end up going through. And
so basically, when you're figuring out your food preps, you want to, like we said, pick foods that your family will eat. You don't want to get an emergency situation and be eating a ton of rice and beans. You want to kind of have a variety. Also, there are other ways you can also do food storage. We're just mostly focusing on the freeze-dried right now because we're doing the review towards the end or middle of this video. But the other ways you can build up a food storage, if you happen to have a garden, you can do canning. You can do dehydrating. Dehydrating doesn't last as long. The reason we wanted to focus on this is because if you don't open these up, they last for 25 years. So
most of them do.
Most of them last for 25 years. So food rotation isn't a huge deal with these unless you open it up.
Some of the items for some of these companies, you really got to watch the package, because some of it will be freeze-dried, which will last up to 25 years when it's properly packaged and not opened. Once you open it, then your
shelf life
goes way down. You got to eat that within the first.
Most of them, like I said, when you open them, they last. If you can reseal or whatever, they usually last. Or if it's in one of the number 10 cans, they usually last up to. It varies for each food, but I've seen it's mostly 3 to 5 years. But you should be rotating.
Yes.
When you do that. However you choose to start your food storage, it really is a personal thing. You have to decide what works best for your family, what works best for your budget. And like I said, you can do the canning, which is, if you're growing your own garden, canning is pretty much free, except for the initial startup of getting your canning supplies. But of course, there's some risks involved with that because canning your own food doesn't last very long. You're supposed to be using your foods usually within a year. And on top of it, there's of course learning how to can properly. If you don't can properly, you can risk botulism, not something that's not very fun. So, you know, it really depends on your budget, your ability, and what's available to you. Another option that we will eventually hopefully be doing videos for is freeze drying yourself. Yes. Harvest rate is, I'm sure a lot of people who know anything about homesteading or emergency preparedness, harvest rate has a home freeze dryer system. Ultimately, that's one of your best options.
Yes, make your own homemade meal or soup that you and your family love, and then freeze dry it. And then it's just like this stuff. Once you package it properly in your Mylar bag with your oxygen absorber, you're good to go. But that's a whole nother video. We'll get into that a little bit more later.
And that lasts for 25 years as well if it's packaged properly. Yes. That will be hopefully a future video. Home freeze drying is a good option. The only drawback is the initial pay, which is why it's going to take us a little time, is because we're saving up to buy our own freeze dryer. It's not cheap, but it pays off. We realized the other day we had purchased quite a bit of freeze-dried food ourselves and realized with the amount of freeze-dried food we had bought over the last 5 years, we could have purchased our own freeze dryer.
And made our own food.
But like I said, this all comes down to what options work best for you, yes, your budget, and your family.
Yep, and at that time our budget couldn't handle a big purchase. Even if we tried to save it up, it just wasn't feasible.
It wasn't in the budget.
No, it was just much easier for us to be able to
slowly purchase our freeze-dried
items
food
as time went by. And that's usually the case for most people. So don't be discouraged when you're sitting down actually thinking about doing it. There are tons of options out here. These 3 companies that we've gone over are just a few. There are tons of them out there, and their prices range from kind of spendy all the way down to very inexpensive. And just like with any kind of grocery shopping, because that's pretty much what you're doing, any kind of grocery shopping that you're doing, you should research all these companies and see what they have and what you and your family would enjoy to eat, and go with that company.
Also, real quick, I know we're going to do a whole video dedicated to water storage, but one of my favorite tricks that I love to tell people so that you can start now is to store up water. If you have a freezer, you can store up water in your freezer. It is recommended that you use 2-liter bottles or juice bottles, that thinner plastic, because milk jugs are actually not good to store in the freezer, store liquids in the freezer, because it tends to break down. It takes a long time, but if you've got it in the juice container or 2-liter, it lasts a lot longer. But what we did was we filled up any empty jugs that we had, juice jugs, found some from our family, filled them up with water, put them in our freezer, and they do a dual purpose. Basically, it's an emergency water supply, and if the power goes out, you have all of these containers of water acting like ice. It keeps the foods that are in the freezer from thawing too quickly. So it gives you a little more life for however long the power is out. But that's just one tip I wanted to give on water supply, because it's the easiest way to just get started now.
We're going to go ahead and prepare some of this food that we have here, and we're going to do some taste tests. So that'll be coming up here in just a sec.
And if you hear some stirring noises or whatever, it's me cooking in the background while Aaron eats, which is pretty much the norm around here.
Yeah. I want to try the Augustin Farms first. Looks like regular oatmeal. It's not bad. It's like any other oatmeal that I usually will eat or make. As you can see, it's quite thick. It's got a decent flavor to it, and it's not too overpowering, so anyone that really doesn't like maple or anything like that. It's not too much. It's not bad, especially for emergency food. Now I'm going to try the Valley Foods, and this one looks a lot more. It's not quite as thick. Of course, the longer you let it sit, the more it'll thicken. Looks kind of like
Porridge.
porridge, yes, more like porridge. Let's try this. Oh, that is so good. I really like this company's food. There is some sort of an emergency or crisis. This really, it's got a lot more flavor than the Augustin Farms. It's better for you because it doesn't have all the added fillers and it's non-GMO and doesn't have all the extra crap in it.
Alright, so we're taste testing the 2 potato soups. They're little different flavors, and I'm all about potato soup, so I think it's the Irish in me. But there's a difference in texture, you can tell right away. One is thicker than the other, but you know, you're always going to have variances. Do you want to try the...
Yep, same order.
That's still hot. Ooh.
Yeah, just blow on it.
It's thick, but you can definitely tell they used freeze-dried, or they used dehydrated potatoes in it instead of freeze-dried, because there's that like chewy texture. I hate saying it, but it is kind of bland. You try it. You tell me if it's... I mean, I'm sure in an emergency that would stick to your ribs, but...
Yeah, it'll definitely fill you up, but...
it's not great.
it's not a lot of flavor.
I need to carry salt in my pack.
That might be part of the reason why, though. I mean, they may be trying to keep that kind of stuff
Sodium
down.
out of it so that
Yeah.
you're not... Because sodium's not a good thing to have because it dehydrates you.
Possibly, but I mean, in an emergency, it's actually not that bad. It's good.
Okay, that is the, what is it called? Breaking Barb's phone. That's what it's called. This is it's just a creamy potato soup.
Creamy potato soup.
And it tastes like it's got like green onion in it or something. Like
Slightly.
Or chive. Something like that. Like green onion or
Chive. It's got a little bit of a
onion
flavor
not
to
strong,
it,
but not strong at all.
strong.
So we've tried this before.
Yes.
Because when we first became affiliates for Valley Food Storage sent us this as a sample, because if you go on their website, you can order a sample pouch of their food and all you have to do is pay shipping. I think a lot of the websites do that.
Yeah, and this one is the Irish Pub Cheddar Potato Soup.
The cheddar potato soup. So it has cheese, which you can't go wrong with cheese.
No, you can't, especially in soup.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yep, just as good as I remembered. It's not as thick as the other one.
No, and I mean, we've already eaten out of this, so a lot of the big potato chunks are...
Yeah, it's more,
missing,
well, I don't know. I think that's my fave.
This is so good. And there is green onion in this.
The difference between Augustin Farms and Valley Food Storage, it may just be because we got the bucket, so the pouches are huge, and you can't. It's not like a container where you can portion out.
Right.
So I think that's on us, but
That's
like,
one of the nice things about Valley Foods is
they're resealable pouches.
they're resealable pouches, and the instructions on the back are so simple.
And they're for one serving.
Yeah, on every one of these packs, it's pretty much for one serving for... Yeah. So all the instructions on the back are for one serving. So you can add to that depending on how many people you're trying to serve, but you're looking at a half a cup or a 1/3 cup of the actual product used to whatever water it says on the back. The reason we chose the oatmeal today and the potato soup was because the Augustin Farms had something that was comparable to what we already had with the Valley Food Storage.
So we kind of wanted to make it like a fair judge, a fair contest.
Yes, between the two.
Honestly, I think this is a better product for like when you're on the move and when it takes up less space. Or like when you're camping, you can.
These are great for camping.
Yeah, when you go camping or hiking or hunting or whatever, I think these are a better option because if you have these, it just seems like there's a lot in there. It's heavy, and I get it. This 72-hour kit is meant for like if you're stuck in in a power outage at home or emergency food or to take with you in the car, but and like I said, you can, like they have the number 10 cans, you can portion out some of that into your own like sandwich bags or sealable bags or whatever. But Valley Food Storage already comes that way. So I think that's a convenience factor.
It's very convenient. Now, we don't want to put our other suggestion here on the sideline.
This was one of the first affiliates we got for food storage.
Yes.
And we have like a ton of their veggies, and
we have the number 10 cans from them in the garage. And unfortunately, we're not going to open a whole number 10 can and we didn't have any soups or anything from them to actually be able to compare to these two. Most of the stuff that we actually have is like whole beans, wheat berries. We have corn, peas, mashed potatoes. This here is
milk.
Instant milk.
And this is really cool because they come in little pouches. They're individual pouches. Now,
it's a single serving per pouch, which is really nice. It's very convenient. The other really cool thing about this company, not just with their food, but they also offer other supplies when it comes to being prepared for an emergency or whatever. They offer equipment, first aid kits. The list is pretty large with this company. It's not just for food.
And a lot of the stuff that they have for emergency preparedness, can't even say it, a lot of stuff they have for emergency preparedness, like they have water filters, flashlights, solar panels to recharge phones and stuff with. They have a ton of stuff. Like, it's insane how much. And it's extremely reasonably priced because, trust me, I've done the research when we were looking to get our own gear and equipment for our bug out bags or other emergency preparedness. I couldn't believe the prices were really actually pretty dang good.
Yeah,
and
even some of them were even comparable with Amazon, if not
cheaper.
Better, especially if you caught them having a sale.
And that's the reason why I will recommend Emergency Essentials. Now, the big thing for us, of course, is because we have, like you've seen in previous videos, we're trying to eat healthier, reduce, additives, preservatives, added sugar, things like that. What we can say is we like these different companies for different reasons. And that's why we're affiliates with them, yes. Is because we like to have options. We like to give our viewers and our readers options. Valley Food Storage fits the more, if you're leaning towards more healthy, if you like to buy organic food, even though it's not organic, it's the closest you're going to come in the emergency
foods, yes.
Because I think, does it even say on here? I don't think it says on here. But on their website, it talks about how they don't put in extra additives or anything like that. They don't put fillers. They don't have MSG in their food, and they're non-GMO. So it's a really good option if you're looking for a healthier alternative for your emergency preparedness.
And if you're just planning a camping trip or going on a backpack trip, hop over to the Valley Food Storage and check them out, because their food's really good. It'll give you the energy that you need.
The key thing for emergency food storage is a lot of times you'll hear it said, I don't know, in prepper communities, that you eat what you store and you store what you eat.
Yes.
So the food that you're planning on storing when you first get started with emergency food preparedness should be stuff that you actually will like. Like, I didn't care for oatmeal, but I know Aaron does, so I'll get him a supply of oatmeal. The whole point is that you don't just store all this food up and then not use it. Thank you for hanging out with us today, and we hope you learned some really good information that might help you get started on being more prepared in case of an emergency happens. If you happen to be a prepper yourself, go ahead and leave us some comments or tips down below, because we always are grateful for any advice that more experienced preppers can give. Plus it helps out our viewers too, because they can see those tips. If you're one of our regular viewers and you're just getting started with emergency preparedness, put a comment down below on what you'd like to learn about. Anything that you want to see us do in the upcoming series. If this kind of content is something you enjoy, don't forget to subscribe, like, share this video. We put out videos once a week on how to nurture a simpler, happier, healthier home.
Cut.
Was that okay? Really? Really?
Mm-hmm.
Didn't you get enough?
No, it's just so good.
You just ate an entire bowl of oatmeal, and I did feed you a roast dinner.
No, that's still sitting over there, and I'm going to finish that too.
No, you ate the other bowl of oatmeal. You left.
That's the one I'm talking about. It's still sitting left.
I need some coffee. I'm hot. Don't give me sass.
Just give it a little blow.
So this is August and I'm gonna smack the crud out of you. You're gonna end up with this in your face.